Beach Home Children's Home, also known earlier as Banstead Cottage Homes, Kensington and Chelsea District School, in Fir Tree Road, Banstead, Surrey, is one of the larger former London Authority children's institutions, and it has been the subject of multiple historic abuse allegations reported by former residents and journalists. Beach Home Children's Home operated from the late 1800s until its closure in 1974 to 1975 as part of a cottage home system run by London authorities, later Wandsworth Council. It housed hundreds of children, often 200 to 400 at a time, in multiple small family-style houses on a large site. Former residents have made serious allegations of widespread abuse, including sexual abuse of children by adults connected to the home, physical violence by staff, a culture of fear and punishment where children were discouraged from speaking out. One survivor described it as a hell and rape factory in media reporting. Another former resident said children were knocked about soon after arrival. Surrey police have confirmed historic abuse allegations are being investigated. Investigations relate to claims of both physical and sexual abuse, spanning roughly the 1950s to the 1970s. Allegations repeatedly reported by multiple individuals include children being moved between homes to avoid complaints, punishment of children who reported abuse, group abuse by adults in some accounts, institutional failure to act on complaints at the time. Survivor accounts have mentioned individuals such as staff members alleged to have abused children. Allegations reported but not proven in court of links to broader abuse networks. Claims that some staff later worked in other care institutions. Beach Home closed in the 1970s and was demolished. Many records were lost or destroyed when the site was redeveloped. Allegations are historic, non-recent, and often rely on survivor testimony. Some claims are under police investigation, but outcomes vary, and many cases remain unresolved.
We're here today on New Brighton Beach in the Wirral. Alan is one of the biggest child abuse survivors in the UK. That's never been listened to, that's never had justice, that's fought for years and years on the streets campaigning. Me and Alan go back 10 years, don't we, Al? 10, 12 years on the streets. Campaigning with whistles, megaphones, foghorns, pans, pots, anything we could find really. So when these politicians are saying, we've got no abuse going on because there's nothing there, we've been basically threatened and told to go away. Otherwise we will face criminal proceedings against us. So, they've been threatening everyone. But anyway, Alan's come down to discuss about Beach Home. What happened in Beach Home? So what is the very first memory you remember of going through this process?
That I was born in London, West 12. I was the last of four. Got three other siblings, Margie, two sisters, Anne and Margie, and Frank, my brother. And I was the youngest. There was 5 years difference between me and my eldest sister. 3 years between my second sister Margie, a year between me and my brother Frank. So I was kind of like the runt of the litter between zero, and we lived in just off the Goldhawk Road in Shepherd's Bush. So council house, but we were taken into care on numerous occasions. I think from 0 to 6, I was in 5 different children's homes. From the age of 0 to 6. It's called respite care. So what they did is they deemed it necessary for you to be taken away from your parents for a bit of, respite care they called it. Whether it was that or not is a completely different thing. I don't remember.
Did your parents have to pay for the respite care?
I believe there is a fee of somewhere where it's talked about 5 pence or a shilling was made to social services. So some sort of arrangement was made with social services. I'm sure there's a place called Cobb's House or somewhere like that, or there's somewhere in Westminster, and I think it stems back to somewhere in Westminster where this fee was paid into. I think there is a little bit of history into it which we can dive into, but I'm sure if you go back into when people used to pay for social services for looking after kids, I think it's still in the archive somewhere. But my mum and dad were both alcoholics, so they would go to public houses and drink, and we were left out in the streets to play. You know, our streets were our playgrounds, and we'd stand outside the pub as long as our parents were in there drinking and getting drunk and that. And it was kind of like an awful existence, because you know, we was out in the streets quite a bit. We were street kids. Go on.
I was going to say, with the respite care, did your mum get her money's worth?
I wouldn't have thought so, no, because at the end of the day, none of us knew what was going on with, going in and out of care. I think I remember being in a place with my sister Anne called Oakley Street. I was in Oakley Street with my sister Anne, and I remember that one. But you remember certain parts of it, with the history of it, of the buildings and old buildings and stuff like that, and you remember how symbolic they were, regimental, things in rows, like all the dormitories, the sinks all in a row, sort of Edwardian kind of Georgian Victorian places and establishments that the council used to use to house children. So I remember 2 or 3 of them in my early ages, but I don't know what happened so much. The only thing I remember is when I went to court when I was 6 years of age. Now, I went before a juvenile court, a judge in Marylebone Magistrates Court on the Marylebone Euston Road. And I went down there, and a judge looked down at me and said, to this little boy standing before him, he said, "Would you like to go to the seaside, sonny boy?" Now, this young child is 6 years of age, and he can just about speak, and learning how to speak, let alone how to think for himself, is a completely different matter. This judge is looking down at a 6-year-old child and saying to the 6-year-old child, "Would you like to go to the seaside, sonny boy?" I'm looking up as a child, 6-year-old child, and I'm looking at the symbols, like the unicorn with the horn out of his head. I mean, what's this horse with his horn out of his head? What is the symbolic stuff of all this? What is the crown? What does it all stand for? What does it all mean? What does the chains around? Was it the lion's or the unicorn's leg, which is something to do with patriotism, or the peasants and the uprisings and so on and so on, or it could go back to the Magna Carta. And then I'm looking at these gates and all the all the emblems of what it's supposed the establishment's all about. And this judge is promising a young guy my age, 6-year-old, lying to a boy of my age, a 6-year-old kid, a baby still, basically. Probably couldn't even read or write at that age. Do you know what I mean?
What did the judge say to you, Al?
He just turned around and said, "Would you like to go to the seaside, sonny boy?" And he's looking down at his child.
So you thought you were going to the seaside?
Yeah, I thought I was going to the seaside.
Did you go to the seaside?
No.
Where did you go?
They put me in a children's home. Bearing in mind, I'd been in 4 or 5 respite children's homes prior to this. I went to a children's home, one of the biggest children's homes in the country, called Beach Home in Banstead, Surrey. Now, it was like a little village. It was under a village kind of headlining or banner. Had 24 cottages in it, each named after trees. And thinking about naming these places, because it was called Beach Home, lined by beech trees. You had ash, laburnum, larch, thistle, maple, laurel, lime, oak, chestnut. Christ, he nearly named them all.
Crazy how it's something to do with nature.
Well, they did that with Beecham. Beecham was, acreage-wise, it was huge. I'd say probably about a mile long. If you was to go in that kind of way about it. It started off at Banstead, and you had woods and trees, and you had 2 major football pitches, probably a double football pitch at the top end, and then you had football pitches, you had kind of woods and spinney at the top and bottom, and they grew all the Christmas trees and that in the children's home, because at one time, being a catering, self looking after itself with its own maintenance guys, its own groundsmen, everything was kind of like built on a kind of like parish, where a parish council would run it all. The home was run by all its own staff.
A paedophile's playground.
It was a paedophile's playground, because at the end of the day, none of the staff were vetted properly. They were brought in from off the streets, and they could have been anybody. I mean,
They weren't anybody. There was 68 paedophiles in Shirley Oaks. I don't know how many were in. Your home is in the paper, and you know they've never took your case seriously. Yet you're here still fighting for justice.
yeah, well said. And like I say, I ended up going to Beach Home. They took me into the offices where you went through the main front gates. You went up to a building in front of you with a clock on top of the as you go in under the door. And I was kind of like went into an office where I was kind of like vetted, you know, and they're all looking at me and sort of scrutinising me, or, you know, psychologising me, or whatever you want to call it. And they had members of staff, whether they be deputy heads, matrons, superintendents, or whatever the case may. And then they told me to go to the stores. I went to the stores. I had to take my home clothes off that I had brought in. They put me in shorts, like a pair of khaki coloured shorts. And everything was labelled. All your clothes had labels in them.
You look like a child from the war.
Yeah, I often look at it, and I sometimes think I look like something out of The Bridge Over the River Kwai, the really war film where British soldiers were prisoners of war, and I had to build this railway bridge.
You look like neglected, malnourished. You were severely neglected, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because what I used to do, some of the things they used to do to the kids in the beach, they'd put food before you, and if you didn't eat it, as punishment, they'd put it before you again the next day. So they were trying to force you to eat that food. If you didn't get it, you'd eat it. And the punishments and the tortures and the whole cycle of violence stemmed from Laburnum, the first cottage I went into. Because as I went into this first cottage where they took me down to, it was called Laburnum. Had a yellow door, like the yellow flower of a laburnum tree. And I went in there, and there was a woman looking in the front door down at me through her glasses like this. And that was like Granny Grace, we called her. But the kids said, don't say Granny Grace to her because she'd go mental. And she was slap happy. She'd slap you around the backs of the neck, around the ears, soft tissue, and around the backs of the legs. And when you had these shorts on, it was really, really painful and stung like mad. And then they used to put you in these baths with carbolic soap, and they used to burn you. And it was awful. From day dot, it was kind of like every day you either got hit, whacked, pushed, shoved, shouted at, or bullied in one form, shape, or
They
another.
burnt your eyes, didn't they?
Yeah, well, let's go back to that. I mean, there's our photographs of me as a young child, of me and my sister, both with really, really dark rings around our eyes, and the hurt in our eyes. You can see it it's there for everybody to see. But yeah, it was abusive from day one. Audrey Wilson was Grace Robinson's sidekick. And she was a paedophile as well. She took me into a dormitory. She came into the boys' dormitory. She was touching me up in the bedrooms, in a dormitory. And what's the ironic thing is, kids turn their back when they used to walk into the dormitories and come to get you from the dormitories. The other kids would turn turtles, could turn round, and every single child would be sleeping with their kind of like their back to the wall, or their back towards the staff, and their faces facing the wall, so they weren't looking. Because if they were looking, then the staff would have either
The fear that, I get from that, a kid's hiding in the bed because they're so scared that, if they look at someone, then that's going to happen to them. And clearly, you would be like, do it to someone else, not me, because these kids are going through horrific trauma. They're going through sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, and it's absolutely horrific what they have to go through.
And they might, as well as that, get taken as well. So rather than get taken, they played the obedience role and just did nothing and stood stum and didn't move, didn't flinch, pretended they was either asleep or something like that, so they wouldn't get disturbed. Anything to distract attention to themselves because they didn't want to get taken. Very, very abusive. I mean, Audrey Wilson.
That's so heartbreaking.
I know. Audrey Wilson would take you in a bedroom, a staff bedroom, and she's a very, very big set woman and large Welsh woman.
She stunk, didn't she?
She did. I mean, a lot of survivors' testimonies are paramount, because the one thing that SARS always turn around and say about their perpetrators and the abusers and the paedophiles is the smell of them. They even smell of drink. If they drink alcohol, you can smell it on them. If they smoke cigarettes, you can smell the tobacco on them. If their hygiene is not good, I mean, she didn't wash herself very well. She actually stunk of very, very bad BO and bodily smells where she probably didn't wash herself properly. That goes for anybody who doesn't look after their hygiene, but a lot of survivors will turn around and say that paramountly that staff had very bad hygiene. A lot of these abusers, the thing that sticks with survivors for years after is the horrific hygiene of the abusers. The smell stayed with you, and you could almost taste it for a long time afterwards.
I've heard that from a lot of survivors. It rings bells with me with Quarriers Orphans Home. There was these 10 prominent people who basically all got together and said, let's do some children's homes across the country. Let's make these massive. Let's put a school, a hospital, a doctor, 25 cottages in. We need, a doctor, a dentist and everything on site, and you keep everything in. Like we said before, paedophiles playground. Sandy was explaining to me that Quarry actually owned the home, so he owned the farms. So they were basically, the children were working on the farms, a bit like slave labour, yeah. And they were getting all the potatoes and the vegetables, and then they were getting fish cheap off the sea, and then that person would be getting money off the state for these children, and he'd be cooking what was produced off his farm. And Sandy can't even eat fish today because he couldn't stand it, and he used to get it rammed down his throat, and it could be there for 3 days, and if he was sick, he was made to eat that fish again, and sick. He can't eat fish to this day. It's like, there's a lot of like things in Quarriers. It's like they both knew each other, Beach Home Quarriers.
Yeah. It's the same as what they did in Beach Home. It's like they put meals before you didn't eat them. Fish was another one they did, and I got a bone stuck in my throat from the fish. They tried to force me to eat this fish, and I got a bone that stuck and cut my windpipe. And I never ate fish for something like 30 years until I met my wife, and then I had fish in a fish and chip restaurant in Grimsby many, many years later. She said, try it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. But I tried it. I had some other condiments with it, like some curry sauce and vinegar and salt and so on and so forth, and I ate it, and I got to like it. But that lived with me for a long, long time. That was a long time before. And
God bless her soul, Kathy. Rest in peace, Kathy. But she saved you, didn't she, Al?
She did, actually, because when I think about it, so if you think I've done 17 years in institutions, so this boy at 18, he's thrown out on the streets. He's sofa surfing where he could find put anywhere he could put his head. He's sleeping in parks. He's sleeping on park benches like we're sitting on now, and going to soup kitchens and like that at railway stations and things like that, trying to find food, begging basically on the streets, because the council just did not want to know. Didn't want to do anything for you. Didn't want to help you. I slept outside the council buildings myself as part of what I was trying to do to get the council to recognise, look, I'm on the streets, what are you going to do? You put me in institutions for 17 years. So basically, my first 25, kind of London was my Beirut, and I had a rough time. So if you say 25 years of age, I met Kathy in my 30s. So for 10 years, I was kind of like a lost man. I was
like a rogue.
I was a bit of a rogue. I did turn to alcohol, and through alcohol, I got myself into trouble. I ended up getting incarcerated through there. But this happens to survivors, and they either go off the rails through
the state fails them.
Because the state failed them, yeah. They took to drugs, alcohol, or violence, and it gets them into trouble, incarcerate themselves. And yeah, I did go off the rails, literally, and I was a bit of a bad guy,
But that's expected from what you were landed with, When a state takes care for a child, I know that, soon as that contract's gone, when they're 18, they get a bin bag. They don't get a birthday cake, they get a bin bag because the contract's gone, And that was what it was like back then. Once the contract's gone, there's no money coming in. They don't have to provide for you because they haven't got a contract anymore. So when that contract's up at 18, now they're saying that they look after you to the 25, but it should have been like that back then. Yeah. But it wasn't. You were chucked on the street. What were you meant to do? What did you actually do? Did you go to the council?
No, I did try later on with John. We took the Beach Home interim report to Wandsworth and most of the councils that are involved, because basically the beach home goes back to the 1800s, stems back to the 1800s. And it was a former workhouse for the poor kids of Kensington and Chelsea, where they were taken out of the houses like were my area, West London, and they were placed into places like big establishments like Beach Home, Shirley Oaks, and many more. And you'll find the amount of children's homes. I mean, thousands of kids go missing every year now.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, when children are spent, when they is it like you talked about you touched on a bit of child labour, when they were no good anymore, we shipped them all over the world. Our children were sent to all four corners of the world, the Asians, Americas, you know, Australia, places like that. Canada, you name it, we sent them all over the world, and kids are kind of like today. In the reason it has changed, it's like kids today kind of like are like drugs, right? You can use a drug once, but you can use a child hundreds of times, and that's where the money is.
Yeah.
That's where the trafficking comes into it.
It's
That's where the grooming comes into it. See, we can talk about satanic abuse, historic abuse. You know, the grooming, trafficking.
It's a good thing to bring up satanic abuse, Alan, because did you see any satanic abuse, or would you say there was any elements of satanic? Because I've seen it in Beach Home, because I've read the ICSA report into Beach Home, and I'd say it was satanic in Beach Home. You know, and you know, Jimmy Savile came to your home as well. That's in the paper that Jimmy Savile came there. So we all know that Jimmy went there, but would you say there's like a satanic element to Beach Home?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it kind of like it was like applied trade, where they took their trade from all over the country and from different homes to homes, and it was kind of like the same abuse, the carbolic soap element.
Alan, did the paedophiles used to move from home to home?
Yes. If they want to keep their job, so on and so forth.
Just like the records.
Yes, and but it is, see, I had 7 abusers in Beach Home. 7. I had men and women abusers. You know, I had school teachers that would chase me around the playground. I had school teachers. You know, when they say to you that they used to throw rubbers at you and blackball rubbers at you, and then slap you around the head or hit you over the knuckles with a cane. I used to do all that to you. You got the cane, you got threatened with abuse. The teachers would chase you around the playground and corner you in the playground. And you had these khaki shorts on. You didn't possess anything. You didn't possess so much as a hanky. You didn't have no money, no belongings or anything like that. They'd rifle through your pockets, feeling you up, right? Because you had nothing in your pockets. What you got in your boy, the term they use, what you got in your boy there, pocket. You know, you can go back to Oliver, where they turned around and said, more, boy, more. It's kind of like, although that was theatrical, it's on some elements of truth. And a lot of stuff where they film a lot of these films, kind of like an element of truth is thrown in to give it the storyline.
Did you ever report the abuse in the children's home?
I did. I went to Banstead Police Station, and I went to, this is where I'm saying I had 7 abusers, because I went to Banstead Police Station and I went to them and said, look, these things are happening to me in Beach Home, like, you know, I'm running away. I ran away twice from Beach Home, tried to walk home to where my home was in Shepherd's Bush, where I came into care from in the first place. But it was a long walk for a little boy of my age, you know, adolescence. And the police took me back to Beach Home in Black Maria, and I ended up going before the superintendent, was Geoffrey Banner. Like I said, with Geoffrey Banner, he got me, and he was trying to say to me, if you go to the police liaison, you know, little boys that tell tales get sent away. And he was bouncing me on the knee in a perverse way, because he was rubbing himself against me, you know, jerking me up and down on his lap. And he was getting worked up, bouncing a young child off his lap. And he said, look in that corner there's the cane. And he said, you know, little boys like you get the cane, or you get sent away for telling lies. And yeah, it was terrific. There was a documentary called Gal is Dead, a Sick Park documentary made. It's on YouTube. If you type in Gal is Dead.
I think she was abused.
She was abused.
Absolutely. By Geoffrey Banner.
Well, Geoffrey Banner abused a lot of children. Geoffrey Banner used to put young girls across his desk and pull their knickers in. Some of these girls are into puberty, so he's looking straight up there, you know.
Disgusting. Didn't you also see, you know, children being loaded onto a van?
I did, because my dormitory window in the Gal is Dead documentary, Geoffrey Banner's being interviewed on this documentary. And in the background, you can see a cottage on the right-hand side. Just before the one that's painted was Laburnum Cottage, the cottage that I was in. I looked out my dormitory window on the right of the beech tree or the light, because what I remember is when I was in there, Beach Home, the beech trees themselves, the lights were underneath the trees, so the light came on, and it was like the canopy of the tree over the light. Used to make flickering patterns.
Spooky.
On the dormitory. So you'd be lying in bed. And
It must have been so frightening for you.
Well, it was broken by Audrey Wilson coming, peering over my bed to take me into her dormitory, or abusing me in the bed itself. But Geoffrey Banner,
When kids are scared of monsters under the bed, there was literally monsters in your room.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. But it was broken by this silhouette of a huge woman, large woman, which was Audrey Wilson. Used to come and take you into a dormitory or into a room, staff room, and take you into their quarters. They used to get uncles from other houses used to come and beat you or take you into their houses. They think about the bloody bathrooms. The bathrooms are the torture chambers.
So how many people were actually complicit on your site at the abuse? If these people are coming in, were they a part of the children's home, or were they like just coming in from
outside? Yeah, there were people from outside Beecham coming in and abusing friends of friends or dignities or whatever the case might be. Were coming into Beecham, and sometimes they'd come in by car and probably come in the evening, and then they would be taken out of the dormitories into the staff quarters or taken somewhere like the bathrooms where they used the chamber, and then they'd take, because you had the upstairs and the downstairs, and it was so much easier. We even had outside toilets. We weren't allowed to use the inside toilets. We had to go to these outside toilets. Even in the freezing cold in the winter, we had to go to these toilets with the highest flushing systems and cold, horrible outhouse type of toilets. We used to go there. I mean, as I say, from Laburnum went to Larch, and I had another abuser. He was in McLaren. And he was like a rugby player. He was built like a shithouse brick wall, solid, muscly, very strong man. And he'd punch you with his fist. He'd think not twice about punching you in the stomach, throwing you on the floor, jumping on your back and riding you like a horse. And then to get you to, after the dinner times, where you would all sit at the tables, you used to have about 5 tables, and all the kids, about 5 round each table sat. There was up to 20 kids in the house, almost like school sizes or classroom sizes. And he would just beat you up and he'd jump on your back. And after dinner, they'd take you into the kitchen, make you wash up and things like that. He'd come and hold the railings behind you, get you up against the sink, and he'd rub up against your...
It's absolutely vile how no one has investigated this, and no one wants to investigate it. They've deliberately left you out of this inquiry, Alan, because you've got things to say.
Yep.
I mean, they were cherry picking who to put in the inquiry in the first place.
Yep.
You know, it's funny how they've enrolled your home into the inquiry, but you haven't been involved in any input into that inquiry because they're hiding it, unfortunately. And, you know, Alan, haven't they lost or destroyed records of yours?
Apparently they've lost all their house records. They've never been found, never been handed in. The house records for 24 cottages, where they used to have like the books in the staff room, where they used to write down the everyday activities of the children, what going on. If you look at my files, you've got my files, a copy of my files, my children's files, which we managed to get through very, very difficult circumstances.
But it's about that then, and half of it's redacted.
Half of it's redacted, some bits are missing. If you look at the dates, there's nothing in between certain dates, and some of the years are missing.
Before he was born as well.
And they got me in care, made a mistake, or put me in care before I was even born. How did that work out?
But there's nothing about the abuse in the files.
Not a thing, no.
Not a thing. And that's why they're claiming now that they have no evidence, because they've been threatening everyone to go away, keep quiet, picking and choosing, cherry picking who to put in. And Alan's a real victim of this, who's been campaigning for justice for 12 years. Can anyone in Great Britain at the MPs not give him a bit of a break and maybe give him some justice? You look at the grooming gangs, you know, the girls have been going to like the STD places, and, you know, why have they not raised concerns that a 15-year-old's walking in with an STD or pregnant?
Or
yeah.
infected by one of their abusers.
No offence, but if a child has sex under the age of 15, unless the child is that age, if it's an older man, he's a paedophile. Say like someone's in danger, there should be like a red alert, danger button, like keep an eye on it. But then, you know, when you put them danger alerts on people, they use that to take the kids, don't they? Oh, these ones are naughty, let's go and lock this one up. Yep. So you can never win with them. You know, how many children have been locked up in care, Al?
I don't know the number. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're talking about the millions, what is it? How many millions did we say?
Because it was like you're locked in, weren't it? Could you go anywhere? Could you actually just open the door and go out and go down the meet to your friends?
At one stage, it was gated, and what was a bit ironic is that I remember when I went to Rampton Mental Institution one day for a protest that was there. The pillars at the front were identical virtually to the ones in Beechholm. The historic abuse of it all is never ever talked about.
I mean, you know, I look at all the buildings because it's very Masonic in my town. Yeah, it is Masonic.
Yeah.
And I look at it like, and you know, I said to someone once, do you think the Masons created the world? And obviously it goes back to Jesus, biblical times and that, where obviously the Masons were, you know, I'm not saying the Masons today because obviously we're going back 2,000 years ago, but at the time, the Masons must have built the buildings, and obviously they built the temples, you know, the one they're all fighting over in Jerusalem now. So they built all these buildings years ago, but at the time, the Masons must have built the buildings, and obviously they built the temples, you know, the one they're all fighting over in Jerusalem now. So they built all these buildings and that. And then, and when you look around now, the only thing that is actually standing is the Freemasons from, like, you know, like a long time ago. I mean, they might not have been called Freemasons, they might have been like this cult that's, you know, carried on over time. But, you know, just my opinion, I think somewhere along the line they killed Jesus because they saw he basically, like us, like a speaker, we can capture the audience, we can make people listen. And he was a very good speaker, Jesus, and he used to stand up on stage and, you know, and have pull crowds and crowds in. And I think they saw something in him to basically copy him. They killed him, and then they copied him and took over the world, and this is why we're in this situation, because unfortunately I do think the Freemasons have got a lot to play in the child abuse, because the Freemasons, like, I've heard a lot into the Freemasons, and the Freemasons going into the homes, you know, the Freemasons are at the top of the satanic abuse cult. You know, we've got to look at the Freemasons like these are judges, these are police officers, these are social workers, these are all the ones at the top that we're saying, hang on a minute, it's not the little ones, it's the big ones, and that's where they reside, and they're still here today, the Masonic buildings. And then in everyone's town, I've got, like, I think 3 or 4 in my town. We've got a temple, we've got a Masonic museum. Now, when I went to the Masonic museum in my town, which is the big museum, there was basically like a statue there with like children and men, and they had guns. And anyway, we found a plaque on the wall that said it'd gone back before World War One. So I was like, how has he put pictures of people with guns way before World War One? Was it him that planned it? Now he's got the same. He was the one that sold carbolic soap. Yeah. Lord Leverhulme, it's his estate, yeah.
83 children from Beechholm went in the Surrey Regiment, right? And they went and fought in the Second World War. They might have been the regiment in the First World War, but 83 of them, right? 83 of them never came back from abuse, from the workhouse, to going in, and at 17 and being put into the Second World War to fight for their country, who'd already abused them. 83 of them never come back. Where's their memoriam? Where's their
bodies? Where's the gravestones?
Yeah.
Have the parents been contacted? Because when we go to search for a child, they tell us to go away or we'll phone the police.
Well, Googled the Surrey Regiment. The children were made up from Beechholm, the regiment.
And I did meet a girl in London, and she claimed that social services murdered their child. And there was another one on the news yesterday. 2 gay people, yeah, they've basically adopted a child, and they've raped her that horrifically. She's dead.
Yeah.
Social services give our children to gays, yeah. Now, I'm not being funny or nothing, but that's not godly. So they're trying to act like God there by giving gays our children. I'm sorry, but I've got a problem with that, because I don't want my child going to a bunch of gays. I'm sorry about that. I'm straight, I'm normal. I want my child to learn a man and a woman like God wants us to. You know, do you get what I'm saying? And it's all to do with God. They're going against the will of God. You know, hypothetically thinking, yeah, if these 2 people that have murdered a child have been vetted to have a child, what's going wrong? We went over there, didn't we, Alan? They're just digging it. Yep. There's no care, there's no tents, there's no police, you know, no police are involved. They've just got like this digger firm, isn't it? And they're just ransacking the place and digging it. And like, how you know, if the kids are there, are the bones just being dumped right now, because obviously everyone knows what's going on and they're just about to get caught, and obviously they are panicking right now because everywhere's getting bulldozed. I'm going to take great pride in being a conspiracy theory. And also, just while we're here, I'm actually wearing today the Meat Rack Boys t-shirt, Michael Tarraga. I actually got this years ago off him, and I've got his book. But he was another survivor that's died, isn't it? And, it seems to be like everyone's out of time and everyone's dying. Like we've had Brian, haven't we? I could have questioned Brian about Mark Trotter and the AIDS scandal and Operation Care, and I can't question him anymore because he's not here. And God rest his soul, because he was an absolute legend. But Brian Clare, he was a part of Witherwack, was it? Witherwack?
Witherwack in...
And that was another child abuse home.
Yeah, Witherwack was a part of southeast, he was from Sunderland and that way, and Newcastle and up that area. The northeast was rife with paedophilia and the establishments. Look, every council you can name, like wherever we are now, Berkshire, Merseyside, whatever, the councils have multiple occupancy children's homes all over the country. You had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of children's homes right across the country with multiple occupants. Thousands of our children were put in these establishments, and when they hold all these inquiries, not one of them, there's never been a survivor-led inquiry. It's always been held by the establishment and by lords, ladies, and ex-politicians, ex-judges, and so on and so forth. People that were born with silver spoon in their life, never had a hard life.
Marking their own homework.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it should be survivor-led. People have named Ted Heath going on Morning Cloud, his yacht, and saying how his hygiene, and it's the same with Cyril Smith. The people from Rochdale were saying about his hygiene, about the Elms guest.
Seen the size of him. And do you know what Meat Rack Boy said? Because I've read this book, what he put out. He basically said that the paedophiles used to take the kids out on a boat and just rape them, murder them, and chuck them out to sea.
Well, that's what I explained that already in part of this interview, where people have named Ted Heath going on Morning Cloud, his yacht, and saying how his hygiene, and it's the same with Cyril Smith. The people from Rochdale were saying about his hygiene, about the Elms guest.
Seen the size of him, he's going to stink, isn't he?
But at the end of the day, it's a lot of them. You can imagine these politicians are probably working in Westminster during the day, or Westminster, shall we say, walking along the embankment to Dolphin Square, where they had, I don't know, there's 100 flats or so many flats out of the 1,000 flats that were there, and they were using them, and the security were allowing these children to be bought, or they might have even been...
They found a boy from a children's home actually in Elm Guest House in the raid.
They found 3 dead bodies in the Thames as well from the embankment. And
I remember someone hanging, and was it John that was on the boat?
Yeah, John used to say that the kids, not so much kids, but bodies would wash up in a certain part of the Thames. The tide would, or the current would take them, and there was like a sandbank down near the O2 thing where they 9 times out of 10 bodies would wash up there. They would know when somebody had committed either suicide in there. There is talk, whether it's true or not, it's talk about committed suicide because of this.
Oh.
People turn to drugs, alcohol, or took their own lives.
Sometimes, you can understand why that goes through someone's head with the amount of horrificness that's happened to them, and the torment and the trauma, and they just want everything to be over. But nobody should ever be made to be in that position or feel like that way. But for the state to make a child feel that way, to do that to themselves, that is just the lowest of the low.
The whole scandal of child abuse is,
rife.
This is what?
Still rife.
It's still rife to this
because it's never ever been sorted. This is why we're trying to do what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the testimony to the public, to the people, because obviously it's still going on today. They're still ignoring it. Look what's happening with the grooming gangs, Al.
Yeah, but the trouble is, unfortunately, you could have a protest tomorrow for the children and hardly anybody turns out. People are so complicit in their own lives and they're comfortable within their own lifestyle, should I say, and they think, well, if I say anything, I'm going to lose my car, my lovely possession of my car. Oh, hang on, I might lose my flat. Oh, wait, hang on, I might lose my house. I might lose my partner. I might lose my children. I will stay stum and say nothing because I lose my job or whatever. My employers will make it difficult for me, or I'll be a target.
Yeah, and big shout out to all the grooming gang girls, Ellie, Fiona, Elizabeth, all of yous. Big shout out to you all. You're doing amazing, girls. Keep going. Never get back into the inquiry, because obviously they've left the inquiry now. Don't ever go back there, not while the Labour Party's in power. Stick to what you're doing. You know, reform, restore Britain, stick to them, because they seem to be handling with care, basically, because no one's really handled anything with care, have they? No one's really took... Well, all the time that we've been on the streets, no one's actually came out and stood with us and said, you know, love, what's the matter? You know, can I help you? Can I do this for you? Can I do that for you? When we've been in front of police officers and we've been going, our children are being abused and this, that, the other, and he's been abused and that, they claim they're impartial. So, and they're going, oh, report it to 101. Then you report it to 101 and they're going, oh, well, what do you want us to do? And then they give you a crime number. So it just doesn't work. The whole system is rigged. It's rigged to abuse children, abuse, rape and murder children, and to make a lot of money. You know, it's just rigged. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump and everyone in America needs to absolutely go nuts on the UK's social services, police force, investigate the whole lot, the NHS. And Donald Trump and everyone in America needs to absolutely go nuts on the UK's social services, police force, investigate the whole lot, the NHS, you know, because you look at the grooming gangs, you know, the girls have been going to like the STD places, and, you know, why have they not raised concerns that a 15-year-old...
Like I said to before, if I was in 4 cottages, and say hypothetically, I don't know how many cottages my brothers or my sisters are in, but if there's 3 more of them, and you say a total of 7 cottages out of 24, and they were all abused, it doesn't bode well that one family, the Merritt family, were abused in 7 cottages out of 24. And how many other people were abused in different cottages?
Well, it makes you laugh, because Shirley Oaks in London, which was next to yours, which paedophiles probably came from Shirley Oaks to your home too, basically says that the Home Office basically employed paedophiles to work in children's homes. So that's the only reason why they won £100 million, and they signed a waiver to say nothing. I just want to ask about, you know, how much of an effect, you know, that had on your whole family, because your whole family was put into care. Were you all separated?
Yeah, we were all put in different cottages. We never shared the same family room ever again. We never put in the same cottages. My 2 sisters and my other brother were all in separate cottages. As a unit of 4 children, we never became a family ever again, because after Beach Home, you know, I met my sisters and my brother, but all 4 of us never shared the same room ever again in life. And my sister passed, and that's another story I can tell, because of the love and affection she never got as a child. She wanted children so desperately because she couldn't conceive of a partner. She went on fertility treatment, and I told her if she stayed on it for too long, there is a chance she could get cancer. Margie was an angel and a beautiful woman.
She was gorgeous.
And she ended up getting cancer, and she passed through a cancer going to her liver, and that was trying to have children and give her the children the love and affection we never had as a young family.
So you're saying that Frank, Marjorie and what was the other one, Anne, and you all were abused at Beach Home, and you were all took to separate cottages and abused individually at separate cottages, and all of them amounted to 27 cottages.
34 cottages.
Because obviously you were moved from cottage to cottage to cottage.
Yeah, well, I was in 4
So there was
cottages.
different staff at every cottage.
Yes. Different. See, what we had to do is we had to call them auntie and uncle. We weren't allowed to call them by their names. We had this adopted thing where, as if they were belonging to us in some sort of family connection, which they weren't. And we had to
Absolutely not.
You have to call Auntie Grace, Auntie Audrey, or the men uncles. They weren't blood related or anything like that. So you had to call them. And the people like Mr. Banner, you'd have to call Mr. as if it was some sort of hospital. And
Like sir.
Yeah. And you had to give them a title. They had to have a title. It was just power over people, basically, and the elitist.
But power over children, that's disgusting. When you're meant to take care of a child and you're getting paid to look after a child, you're meant to look after that child. You're not meant to do what they did to you. You know, how many other places around your kids' home were doing the same thing that you can think of? Because we've got Beechwood, Beach Home, Shirley Oaks.
You've got Witherwack in Sunderland, you've got Quarries, and then you've got
Scotland.
Kencor, you've got
Kincora Islands.
You've got children's homes in Wales. England's got 9 of Wales. Hope the Glen was a very bad one as well. And they're all over the place.
See, what no one's ever done, Alan, is all these children's homes where the abuse has happened, the paedophiles have kind of moved from home to home to home, and nobody's actually got that home and 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 put it all together and done a big investigation of all the abuse in one, because when you separate that abuse, it doesn't look as big as a problem. When you put that abuse together, that's a big problem.
But when you're talking about it, millions of children were abused in this country.
Billions.
Yeah.
How many are dead?
100,000 children go missing every year. They claim those are the records.
180.
They see they try to change it and so it doesn't look so bad and tint it with, I don't know, look at it through rose-tinted glasses. It's all, whatever you say, one child is bad. We're talking about off the Richter scale.
We're talking about, industrial scale child abuse. Because when they used the term industrial, they were making children work, they were taking money for them children, they were meant to be providing a care to them children. They were doing none of it. Yeah. In fact, they were abusing children, starving them, neglecting them, malnourishing them, robbing them of their education, robbing them of the freedom and childhood because they had them locked down. And basically, why not just give them a cage? It's no better than putting them in a children's home with abusers. Why didn't you just cage them? It would have been, easier for the kids, wouldn't it?
Well, the ICSA didn't touch speech home, to be truthful. They didn't talk about the acid baths. They didn't talk about the carbolic soap treatment.
What did they talk about?
They touched it. They looked at it, but didn't go into it.
See, the thing is with ICSA is they've got the powers to investigate, but they've got no powers to prosecute. So what's the point in the inquiry if you can't prosecute who you found out that's guilty? I mean, we've got people that's testified in the ICSA that should be sat in jail right now, but because they've got no power to arrest and they go, oh, that's the police's job, but then the police don't want to do it because they're go away, because we might have to tell the world what's going on about all the children's abuse and all the children's homes all up and down the whole country.
When you talk about politicians are involved. They were taking children out of Beecham in these sunshine coaches, and they were ending up in Dolphin Square or the Elms Guest House. And politicians are heavily involved. That's why politicians don't do nothing about it. And when I keep saying about the care system, it's fundamentally broken even to this day. They've sold it off to the highest bidder, and it's run by private companies nowadays, like the Keys Group, and many private companies that have gone in and put these tenders in to do the work, and they're winning these contracts. Some declaring themselves bankrupt or in liquidation, and yet get more funding the next year. Well, how does that work? When children talk about Ted Heath and they talked about Morning Cloud, they said exactly the same thing about how bad breath he had. The same with Liam Britton. Mm-hmm. Cyril Smith children have said the same thing. And kids were taken out of the establishments and sent to these groomers, sent to these abusers, sent to these paedophiles. And the politicians are so complicit, it's unbelievable. The House of Cards, for the Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan are heavily involved in the grooming gangs.
Absolutely. Have any of your abusers ever been prosecuted, charged or arrested? I
think Mr Gray was prosecuted. He was a guy that abused my sister Marjorie in her cottage. I think it was Maple that he was in. Anne was in Thistle. She got abused. And she doesn't want to talk about it, ever talk about it. The police came back to us called Operation Broadcast in my 60s. Basically on a fact-finding mission to find out who was involved rather than what's involved. Saying time spent now, we could only probably bring a charge of actual bodily harm. And so they're going after the real perpetrators and the people of crime, who commit heinous crimes against our children and our women and so on and so forth. What I said to you earlier on, they've got me in care when I was a baby. So my abuse started as probably before, as a young baby, 1 or 2 years of age, that I was put into these respite care homes up until I was 6 years of age. If you had the total years together of 11 years in Beecham, all the respite care, it adds up to 17 years.
I mean, what we know now about, babies being injected to stop them crying, to basically for paedophiles to sexually abuse them. You've got no memory before you were a certain age and you were in care from birth. So how do you know that nothing's ever happened to you and they've not took you out of your cot and they've jabbed you with a needle and they've done something else to you?
Well, they were giving us certain things. We don't know what they were giving us, but they were giving us things through either drink or through some sort of substance they were giving us. They had a sick bay in Beecham where there was nurses. I actually stayed in the hospital unit of Beecham when I was a kid. and because I had a temperature of 103, I had impetigo, or is it impetigo?
Yeah.
And
That's through dirt. That's so it was probably dirty though.
and various other bits and pieces that we had to go to a dentist, optician, and everything in the sick bay. You know.
Did you have a dentist?
Yes.
Funny that, isn't it? How Epstein's got a dentist too. But anyway, go on.
Where we had a dentist come in, we had a barber come in, there was a lot of tradesmen in there, there was a cobbler's, a laundry, there was a stores, there was house deliveries. If you said there were 24 cottages, now then we touched on this earlier on, and you said how was the extent of abuse in Beach Home?
Sorry, Al. I was going to ask that because obviously you seen the van at the window, and obviously you jumped at that window and you saw all the kids getting loaded onto a van, and the staffs came at you and ragged you down and said, don't ever look at that window ever again. But I said, did you look, Alan? You said, yeah. I know how horrific that is. It's for kids to be loaded onto a van and never be seen again, you know. And with everything that everyone else is saying, like everyone's claiming they're abusing children. Social services up and down the country are abusing children. They've got children in care of the local authority that are to do with the grooming gangs. Unfortunately, it is them. Like I said, at Liverpool, you know, it's not the little ones that we're looking at. We're looking at the top ones. We're looking at the big ones. We're looking at the MPs, councillors, police officers, judges, all the ones at the top. Yeah, all complicit.
And again, it's like a service where you know the establishment is part of the problem, because i.e. the courts,
or Freemasons,
the social services, everybody, they're all involved, and like we say, our politicians involved. These sunshine coaches, sometimes 2 and 3 will come into Beach Home and the kids will disappear, and I remember seeing them. They were like that, these like a sunshine. I'm not too sure if they were grey in them days or white in them days.
See, Jimmy Savile came to your home, and Jimmy Savile owns Sunshine Coaches, and you seen girls getting loaded onto the van.
I don't know if he owned them, but I think he sponsored them.
It's still active.
The link is there, yeah. I've been in the House of Lords and I stood up and asked to speak, and they said it was being recorded, the feed cut after 5 minutes. And then there was not just only that, you know, I've been in the Home Office and spoke to politicians. I've written to politicians, I've written to mayors, I've written to CEOs, I've written to the councils. You know,
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing at all. And what happened to them records what are in the houses?
You know, hypothetically thinking, yeah, if these 2 people that have murdered a child have been vetted to have a child, what's going wrong? And it goes that way in all the cases, all the kids' cases in care. You know, what is going wrong for social services to get it so wrong?
Yeah, but Angie, we were talking about the whole structure is wrong, and it's been wrong for a long time.
I think it's more sadistic. I think we've got sadistic paedophiles who...
How, if it's not been changed before...
I mean, Alan, how are we meant to change it? We've been on the streets 10 years. We've kicked up a fuss. We've given our beans. And it goes that way in all the cases, all the kids' cases in care. You know, what is going wrong for social services to get it so wrong?
Angie, we were talking about the whole structure is wrong, and it's been wrong for a long time.
I think it's more sadistic. I think we've got sadistic paedophiles who...
How, if it's not been changed before...
I mean, Alan, how are we meant to change it? We've been on the streets 10 years. We've kicked up a fuss. We've given our beans. We've been on the streets with megaphones, whistles.
Somebody who holds the key to power. Somebody who holds them keys to that prison are politicians.
See, the people with the keys in power are the people that's done it. It's a little bit complicated right now.
They can do what they like with us.
Hopefully Restore Britain comes across the story and, you know, contacts us and maybe says, like, you know, I'll try and help you.
But you have to work grape in TikTok rather than rape, because you get taken down. You can't write grooming down.
Well, we can just go beep.
But at the end of the day, you know where I'm coming from. That's where I'm coming from.
I know where you're coming from,
control.
But, you know, yeah, the control is, it's just ridiculous. It's like the lunatics have got the asylum and controlling it.
It's been run by
we're being run by the lunatics, mate. Loonies.
Long time.
Loonies. Right, bye guys. Big shout out to the grooming gang girls, all our friends, everyone up and down the country who's campaigning for the kids.